This week, this is a project that has been with you since I think 2019, which is a long time for one movie to simmer. What are your current feelings? It's basically I'm asking आपको कैसा लग रहा है?
Tell me, you tell me. You know, it's like, delivering one of your most beloved babies. Because we spent so much time trying to make this film happen. Once the film, actually when Anubhav decided to produce the film, we had lockdowns, continuous lockdowns. Can you switch on your mobile? Yeah. We had continuous lockdowns and we had to shoot within a bubble. So there was struggle shooting the film. Then there was, after the lockdown there was litigation. So lockdown, litigation, and ultimately, we have managed with a lot of perseverance, with a lot of love. We are bringing our film to you. And with a lot of pride, we are releasing the film on the 3rd of Feb. And yeah, I'm nervous, but also happy and relieved that finally the film will be seen by the world.
So before we bring in the boys, I wanted to ask, post-scan, there is this burden of expectations that people have projected on you. Do you yourself sometimes feel that that you have to deliver something as impactful as that? Do you think about that a lot?
No, I don't. If you do that, the moment you start letting those expectations weigh you down, you end up only, doing lesser work than you did in the past. For me, it's always a fresh start. A lot of young filmmakers ask me, where does your energy come from? It comes from, letting go of what I'd done in the past. So, that I don't have an archive of any of my old films. I have no copies of my old films. I don't watch my old films. And I dwell upon them only for the learnings that I get from them. But it's like a new beginning. Every day is like a new beginning. February 3 will be a new beginning, we'll be embarking on something else and we'll start afresh, go to the editing studio, look at the edits of my show and, life just goes on.
Would you like to bring in Zahan and Aditya?
Now, I want to introduce two really special boys, Aditya Rawal and Zahan Kapoor. To all of you. Both these boys are Nepo kids. So, yeah, but but unfortunately, it's not the kind of launch that a Nepo kid normally gets. So there's a Kapoor boy, Zahan Kapoor, who is being launched as a very unlikely hero. He does not have a heroic entry. He's being launched as a boy who discovers his courage through an ordeal of one night. He's a boy who discovers the strength that is within him, the strength of humanity that he discovers through the process of the film. And what is commendable is that Zahan chose to do this film as his first film. When there are opportunities around you where you can get launched as a conventional hero, and he wanted to make this beginning, wanted to explore his life as an actor, and for that alone he needs to be applauded. It's a choice, it's a tough choice to make, and it's a wonderful choice to make. I have Aditya Rawal, who you have seen once or twice. I hope you have seen less of him because this film will show you what he's capable of. He's capable of killing people. There's something really terrible lurking in that smiling face. And I've got the worst out of him in this film. So yeah, but these two boys are talented. They are a generation of actors, who we believe are, this generation. So this film is like an exploration of this generation. And through them I've explored this generation. You know, you always believe that these young people are on social media all the time, they are distracted, they have an attention deficit. But in them I discovered a spirit that we often ignore. And that spirit is what they have portrayed through their work in this film. So yeah, I give you Zahan Kapoor and Aditya Rawal.
Round of applause for these two very promising newcomers. Yesterday I was talking to Rajkumar Rao, who'd come to see the film, and one of the things that he pointed out about Faraaz is that it completes your Muslim trilogy, so to speak, you know, with Shahid, Omerta and Faraaz. Also, if one sort of probes and looks at patterns in your work, we can see there is a preoccupation with young Muslim men who are persecuted, you know, including by the shot that you did in Modern Love. So I'm sure that's not by design that you chase these subjects, but subliminally they come and they are a reflection of your thoughts. How does that process work?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know, I always say that you don't find stories, stories find you. And that's what happens. You know, you sort of oscillate towards a story that reflects your concerns about the time that you're living in, about the world that you inhabit. And I think Faraaz is part of that exploration. You know, Shahid began as an exploration of the othering, the others, and the othering of communities. You know, so when you say Muslim, you know, for me Muslim is replaceable. You know, anybody who's othered. You know, and we often skirt these questions, we often ignore these questions, we often take a back seat on these questions. We are passive about facing those questions. Can we just have silence there, please? पीछे कौन है पीछे? Please, sorry. Very distracting. Yeah, so we often you know, let those so these are just films about difficult conversations of our times, you know, and so Faraaz is a step in that direction, you know. So when with Shahid we started a conversation about the othering and about a young man who within that a system that is loaded against him finds a quest for truth, finds his nobility, who discovers his nobility. In Omerta, we sort of explored the completely opposite side of the axis. In Faraaz, we are taking head on this conversation of this good versus bad, you know, and using religion to justify the bad. So it is tackling that head on. I think the trilogy, you know, these concerns will not be completed in a trilogy. I think this is it's an ongoing process, you know. So if you look at this poster, Article 15 Shahid, you know, that it's very telling. So Article 15 can be seen as a part of the same series, you know. There's a story about the othering of caste, religion, until we put people in boxes and we, you know, continue this good versus bad based on people's religious or social identity. We will continue this kind of you know, discriminatory and binary debate.
Zahan, I wanted to ask you, Hansal joked about being an advocate. Usually, I mean, it's not misplaced. Usually the idea is that, you know, if somebody from a star's family is getting launched, it's a typical conventional heroic debut. You've consciously, and it would have been fairly possible for you to go that route, but you chose this, you know, like a relatively independent film which, you know, focuses more on the story, not the stardom. A bit about those choices.
First of all, like, I'm completely aware and very, very fortunate to be given that opportunity by a filmmaker like Hansal sir. He saw me hanging around Prithvi and he felt something would fit in his mind. At the time, I was trying to seek out opportunities myself. I wanted to go through the route of theatre. Aditya and I both have a very strong connect to live performance, and we've grown through that medium and discovered our love for the craft from there. And from my perspective, it was always, I mean, these were very nice things, and it's very nice to be in a situation where people can say that you have access. But for me, it was very clear that I wanted to be a part of stories. I wanted to be a storyteller. I wanted to do anything I could to learn and to be in the right position to be able to grow. Hansal sir offered an opportunity of, like he said, it is a part of his process of discovering stories, discovering a character, understanding what makes them tick, a flawed sense of humanity, of how people just struggle with these questions with their lives. And I think all of his movies somehow always find that rus. And it was something that instantly felt like this is not a calculation. This is a genuine attempt to communicate to an audience something very profound, something very soulful, something very current and urgent. And to be a part of that, I think, is the most beautiful thing. So, genuinely just want to be here to serve the story. It is an incredible story. It is a very powerful story. And it is our great fortune that we are allowed to try and give that story some sense of life, some sense of voice. So it's an opportunity that we have been given, and I hope that we have managed to at least put our energy forward and do it some sense of justice. So it's not about making choices as much of it as it is about hopefully just leading from the heart.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very well said. Aditya, I wanted to ask the part that you play of Nibras. You know, it's a dark role. It's somebody who's completely sort of, convinced about the ideology that he's standing for. But what makes it stand apart is that he also feels very human. There are a bunch of contradictions in that character and the way you play it. How was this journey to sort of humanize a part that is so clearly, demonic?
So to begin with, I think it was in the script. It was in Sir's brief as well. The idea that these are not your run-of-the-mill Khunkar terrorists that you watch in cinema very often. They are human beings. They are, in many ways, lost boys. Sir mentioned the point about religion. Religion can lead to a lot of good, but it can also lead to a lot of bad, because it's about how you react to it as an individual, right? Eventually, it's, as you would say, it's a zaria of getting to some place, right? So I think it was from the get-go, the idea was always to humanize them, because they are, they're lonely, they're lost, they're angry, they're unfortunate that at a particularly vulnerable moment in their lives, they had the wrong person put an arm around their shoulder. That is the real tragedy. And that was something that Hansal sir was very conscious of, was very intent on from the get-go. It's there in the script. I mean, you see the first scene, and we've often spoken about it, where you get that these are boys, they're kids. They could have very well been going to a college match or a football match or something like that. So I think it was always there. And the opportunity to sort of dig into that and go deeper and deeper into, the person that the character I'm playing, as opposed to the external action of going and shooting up a cafe, holding people hostage. I think it was always the intent was always there from the get-go. But I will say that I inherited it in many ways, as opposed to sort of initiating it.
Great. Hansal, I wanted to ask you, for you to sort of, from a direction perspective, for about nearly 120 minutes, you're confined in one space in the film. You're held hostage with the people who are held hostage there, even as a viewer. To sustain that kind of tension for that long, was that particularly challenging for you?
Yeah, every film, you take on a film, one is because of the story, that the story and the characters appeal to you. The other is that how do you tell this story, the telling of the story. And that telling is where the craft comes in. And my theory on craft is that craft is always invisible. That craft should not come in the way of the film. So how do I make my craft invisible and yet make the film engaging? So that was the challenge. So when a storytelling challenge sort of presents you, itself to you when you're about to start making a film, that's when you feel alive as a filmmaker. And I make films because they keep me alive as a storyteller. They keep me alive, they keep me going. You know, if I wasn't making films, if I wasn't on a set, I don't know if I would be here sitting in front of you today. It's the only reason I am. So, and every film, it's a kick. It's a kick that I get. You know, what do I do? How do I make this absorbing? So we sort of we ask for trouble often. You know, okay, now we have this chamber drama. You're stuck in a chamber, and you have people outside on the streets. You have the entire system outside, and you have this place held hostage. And now what do? So there was a script that we wrote with the map of the cafe in mind, a geography in mind, and suddenly the set was completely different from the geography in the script. So all the readings we had done, all the workshops we had done went out of the window. So suddenly you are presented with a challenge when you're there on set, and okay, now what do we do? So that was the fun, because then you are harnessing your instinct. You know, and everybody, all the actors, everybody suddenly is relying on instinct that, okay, what happens after this? What will you do? Will he stand near the window? Will he hide there? Will he ask for help? Will he cry? Will he keep quiet? So everything became a reaction to the moment. Yeah, so it was about, so ultimately, I think it's about being in that moment and responding to that moment. It is not about that calculated performance or that calculated moment. You know, it's there. It's all there in the script. There are lines. There are, sparkling gems in the script. But it is, how you sort of thread them together. You thread them together using instinct. So that the thread that binds those sparkling gems together is instinct. Is, discovering the story yourself.
To talk about the release of the film, it's releasing in limited screens on Feb 3rd. What was the thought behind that? Because it's a conscious decision to ensure that you scale up as we go along, or how did you and producer Anubhav Sinha arrive at that decision?
I think it was, we know that we don't want to, we are not in that illusion that this film is a weekend film. This entire obsession with the weekend and the box office. I mean, the box office ultimately is the business of those who have invested in the film. So the yardstick that the box office becomes a yardstick for a film's success or its quality is something that has always, upset many filmmakers like me. That is why that. And we've always sought producers who support the growth of a film organically. There needs to be an organic growth. There has to be an audience. That every film has an audience. We have to help the film find that audience. We have to allow it to breathe. It cannot just, every film cannot be this blockbuster on a Friday or a Saturday. It has to be given time to breathe. And I think that is the attempt over here. We are releasing it in 15 centers, in approximately 100 odd screens. And these are select theaters and premium shows, and we want audiences to discover the film slowly. As more and more audiences go to the theater, talk about it, have conversations, and let the audience grow. So I mean, we are trying to I won't say reinvent the game, but to try and find an audience for these films that we make. We want these films to, Faraaz could have very easily been a film that would go directly to OTT. But the cinematic experience of Faraaz, every film, while there's a spectacle film, there's an RRR, there's a Pathan, there's also a Faraaz, which is also to be enjoyed on the big screen. The tension, the immersive nature of the film is something, the sound, the entire, so there is a spectacle which is different from the spectacle that you would see in a Mission Impossible, but yet it is a spectacle. It is meant for the big screen, and we want this film to be enjoyed by audiences, not enjoyed, but at least I want the audiences to get immersed in the experience.
Hansal sir, now this is a question for all three of you before we open it up to the media. There is a narrative that's also emerged that, why, is an Indian filmmaker making a film about Bangladesh, and the slippery slope there is, are we profiting off the trauma of other people without, are we the right people to tell that story? Now, I personally feel that's not a very smart argument, but how do you react to accusations such as those?
I don't even give attention to that. I mean, a story is a story. A story that appeals to me has larger, has a more universal appeal than that one local story. That is the reason the film is made in Hindi, so that I could take this story. I felt that this story had a global resonance. This whole argument of the good Muslim versus the bad Muslim, which has been co-opted by those who want to incite hatred, who want to encourage bigotry. We need to co-opt that. People who believe that religion cannot be misused like this need to also co-opt that conversation, and I can do it only through stories. And this story was a catalyst for that. When I heard the story, when Zahan and I went to Bangladesh, we were moved by what we heard from the accounts that we heard from people. We were genuinely moved, and so human emotion does not have any borders. Stories are not bound by language. Stories are bound by hearts of those who see them. Holocaust films, have they been made in German? Hollywood has made so many Holocaust films over the years. So I think we have to move beyond these petty arguments, and how can you own something that affects all of humanity? No country owns it. I mean, we as a race need to empathize with the victims and completely denounce the actions of those who do these things.
Zahan, any thoughts on, while playing something that is inspired by a real person, how do you tread that tightrope?
To be honest, it was looking for guidance from the filmmaker, from Hansal sir. It has been, Aditya and I have spoken about this. This film, the conversation started in 2019 with me. We went to Dhaka, Bangladesh together to do research, to discover the story, to discover the character, to discover the version that we can present to hopefully touch everyone across border, across language. And we struggled through that, through 2 lockdowns, through everything. But we had nothing better to do in a way, and Hansal sir kept us busy. But it's a testimony to Hansal sir. He had every other offer coming at him. Post-scam release, it was the phone wouldn't stop ringing. But Hansal sir also stood by this story, and that same instinct, whatever it was, when he heard it the first time. So we were looking to that voice. And I think it is an honest thing for me to say that we surrendered to Hansal sir's approach, and we were better for it. So it was not about us trying to impose our ideas, as much of it was, how do we facilitate what we're trying to explore? And even Hansal sir was trying to explore it. It's not like he knew the answers. It was like that, हम साथ में कर रहे हैं ना, तो करते हैं, देखते हैं.
So I'll give you the answer in short, in one sentence. The buck stops at me. What do you want to say? Just tell him. Let him be.
But Hansal, it's a fair point. Post-scam, you could have worked with any of the top stars who were lining up to, get your time. But to take that risk of, working with absolute rank newcomers, groom them and, sort of facilitate their...
I don't know. I've never seen... It's not confidence. I've never worked any other way. Shahid could have been made with anybody at that time, a big star with that time. Of course, none of these big stars wanted to work with me. That's another thing. But, there was Rajkumar Rao, who I met, and very instinctively I liked him. And, so very often, this is one thing I always tell people. Okay, people say, okay, you make these films, and, how do you measure the success of these films? I measure the success of these films by the success that the people who have participated in the film enjoy later in the industry. So very often a lot of these independent films serve the larger interest of the industry. the ecosystem. They feed the ecosystem with newer talent, with better talent, and the more talent that you create, the larger kind of stories that you start saying. You know, so every film is not meant to be an RRR, but it is meant to feed an RRR. It is meant, you know, the technician like Pratham who shot the film will go on to shoot a bigger film. You know, so everybody, the entire ecosystem benefits from this kind of film, and I think we are that. I mean, we are all farmers. We are all farmers, you know, we are harvesting talent, and you know, the fruits are for everyone. Yeah, to enjoy, yeah, to reap.
Okay, now we'll open up to the members of the media. So if any of you all have questions, please raise your hands, and can we get the mics there, please? Yeah, Seema.
Hi. So I want to ask, like, you were just talking about chamber drama, how difficult it is, Ankur had asked. I want to ask the two young actors also, Zahan and Aditya, because it's only very restricted movement in one where the cameras are very close on your face. So how challenging was that, you know, as actors?
So first of all, I also went into jumping in the deep end with Hansal sir because he's made films about characters across a long period of time. Scam, Shahid, Aligarh, these are stories about someone's life. So you get to spend, Mehta, you get to spend time with them in many, many scenarios. So I thought, wow, meditation on character filmmaker, it will be amazing. पता चला एक रात की कहानी है. उसमें character के पास उतनी ही opportunity होती है. So it was a complete reversal of even our expectation, and I think Hansal sir's attempt also to say, nahi, we will explore how do you create a character within such a constriction. How do we explore this one single location and just inhabit it, like he said. And that's what we did. We did lots of readings, we did everything, we absorbed the story as much as we could. And then by the time we were on floors, it was like he said, is that things were different, but we knew in the back of our minds what the story was, and we were very fortunate to shoot most of it chronologically. So उसमें क्या हुआ कि we were able to get into it, live through it, and it was amazing because one night we were shooting, it was actually the anniversary of the attack, and we overlapped with that. And I found myself just getting lost in thought, thinking that how fortunate are we that we are in a position where we are safe, we are allowed to, through our art, through our craft, communicate such a story, but people have gone through this for real. This has happened to people, this has affected people, this is a tremendous privilege to be able to communicate that fact, and it's not lost on any of us. So we know that it's a very sensitive thing, but I just hope that that intensity that you feel, like Hansal sir said, when you sit in an audience, and what Ankur said is that you feel like you are as much a participant in this event as an audience member.
Like I was telling Ankur sometimes, very edgy.
So, and that is the approach, and that's again the challenge that Hansal sir said, and we managed to all submit to that. And in 23 short days of shoot, we've given you a 2-hour movie, you know, so I hope that, I mean, somehow we've managed.
Aditya, would you like to add?
Just to add to what Zahan is saying, you know, in terms of the process, we shot chronologically as he mentioned, but also it was this one location. We were in a COVID bubble. It was all of us together. It was a community, as you say, off the pitch and on the pitch. Because in the space itself, also, you had all the actors present. All the actors that are present throughout the film in the restaurant. Each one was present there. Each one was willing to give 100%. So it was almost like you're stepping onto a live stage and you're living those moments, which made it all the more visceral. And then, you know, the idea of sort of the fact that it coincided with the anniversary of the attack itself. All of those things, I think it helped us sort of bring it to life in a manner that I don't think we would have been able to otherwise, you know. So there are, I suppose, advantages of telling a long drawn out story over a long period of time, over different locations. But the advantages in terms of process of doing this chamber drama chronologically while having everyone present at all times, you know, wherever you turn the camera, there is life. So that aspect just made it so much, I don't want to say easier, but it helped us sort of bring it to life, I guess, in a more effective manner.
Just one more question for Hansal sir. Like we're reading about these two victims' mothers filing an appeal challenging the release of the film. So what happened?
No, see, I always maintained one thing, that we have put our faith in the judiciary. They filed an appeal. We have put our faith in the judiciary. We have done whatever is well within our rights, whatever is correct. We made the film with sensitivity. We have never made any rebuttal or anything in the press. The people who are talking about right to privacy have gone to the press over and over again. They have held press conferences, we have not. And we would like to maintain the dignity of the victims and our film at all times. So beyond that, I mean, I will not say anything. There are grieving families, and we have dealt with it with the maximum empathy possible. All the empathy that is there in our heart. The intention of the film is not to profit from anybody's misery. If I had to profit, I would have, after Scam, jumped into something else or cast his more illustrious cousins in the film.
Hello, Zahan, my question to आप बहुत खुश नसीब हैं कि आप कपूर फैमिली को बिलोंग करते हैं. आपने अपने दादाजी की कौन सी फिल्में देखी हैं और आपकी फेवरेट फिल्म कौन सी है?
Rapid fire.
आई एम वेरी बैड विथ फेवरेट्स. मुझे फेवरेट एक चुनना बहुत मुश्किल होता है. आई रियली थिंक दादाजी की जो करियर है जो थी, इन टर्म्स ऑफ हाउ ही डिड कमर्शियल सिनेमा, इंटरनेशनल सिनेमा, फिर प्रोड्यूस किए थे अपने फिल्म वालास के. That shows his sensitivity to, it is not one versus the other. ऐसा नहीं है कि one picture is better than the other. ऐसा नहीं है कि कमर्शियल सिनेमा में दम है क्योंकि ऑडियंस जाती है. ऐसा नहीं है कि आर्ट सिनेमा में या आर्ट हाउस या जो भी कहो, पैरेलल सिनेमा या ऑल्टरनेटिव सिनेमा, उसमें हकीकत है, रियलिटी होती है, वो सारी चीज़ें होती है, ग्रिट है, तो दैट इज़ बेटर. नहीं, वो बात ही नहीं है. इफ़ वी कैन सर्व द स्टोरी, if we can participate and have the opportunity to participate with good filmmakers and good storytellers, every story will find its version, find its audience, hopefully. So the idea is just to hopefully, if I can, is learn from that teaching and carry forward and participate with my best intention, with my best effort. So
Hansal ji,
I love watching films, तो मैं सारी पिक्चर देखता हूँ. I watch all kinds of cinema and I will continue to watch because I love it.
His grandfather has been an inspiration for an entire generation, particularly for the films that he produced. Yes. At a time when there was so much of, when he himself was in all those big commercial blockbusters with Mr. Bachchan, he made films like Junoon, 36 Chaurangi Lane. I mean, those films. So that's what, see this argument of the box office versus कि आपको 36 चौरंगी लेन का बॉक्स ऑफिस मालूम है, किसी को नहीं मालूम है, बट द फिल्म इज रिमेंबर्ड. So ultimately what do you do? I mean, what Shashi Kapoor has left behind is a legacy that is way beyond what the film did on a weekend. And वही है, films leave behind much more than that. Stories resonate far beyond जो एक वो गिनती, मतलब इन्वेस्टर्स पे जो है ना, जो ट्रेडिंग करते हैं उन पे छोड़ दीजिए.
इसी से जुड़ा हुआ मेरा सवाल है हंसल जी, अगर भावना शर्मा, नव भारत
जी
हाँ, अगर आपके सिनेमा की बात करें, अभी आपने 36 चौरंगी लेन और इनकी बात की, तो आपका सिनेमा भी ऐसा ही है जो चौंकाता है हर बार. और आपने भी कभी आप जिस मुकाम पे हैं वहाँ पर आप बहुत सीधी सादी अच्छी कमर्शियल फिल्म बना सकते हैं, लेकिन आपकी ज़िद हमेशा रहती है आप एक नया सब्जेक्ट, चैलेंजिंग सब्जेक्ट, थॉट प्रोवोकिंग सब्जेक्ट को कमर्शियल बनाने की ज़िद आपने हमेशा की और कई बार आप सक्सेसफुल भी रहे, लेकिन क्या बॉक्स ऑफिस के आंकड़े आपको कभी डराए हैं?
नहीं, मुझे डर बॉक्स ऑफिस के आंकड़ों का, जो ऑडियंस के लोग जो उसका हवा बनाते हैं ना, मुझे डर उससे है कि वो फिल्म के मेरिट्स को छोड़कर वो बॉक्स ऑफिस के आंकड़ों से उनको, ये जो तुलना होती है ना बॉक्स ऑफिस के नंबर से फिल्म के क्वालिटी की, उस तुलना से मुझे डर से ज़्यादा मुझे उस चीज़ से मुझे घृणा है उस चीज़ की। और मुझे देखिए, मैं भी कमर्शियल फिल्म्स ही बनाता हूँ। कमर्शियल फिल्म क्या होती है मेरे लिए कमर्शियल फिल्म वो होती है जिसमें फिल्म के इन्वेस्टर्स पैसे गंवाते नहीं हैं इन द लॉन्ग रन। तो मेरा मानना है कि मेरी फिल्म्स पैसे गंवाती नहीं है। हाँ, वो मतलब आप उसमें मेरे बड़े पोस्टर्स नहीं देखेंगे कि 300 करोड़ 250 करोड़, वो नहीं देखेंगे और मुझे कोई गिला नहीं है उसका। लेकिन आप अगर 10 साल बाद शाहिद को याद कर सकते हो, अगर 20 साल बाद कोई कहे कि इन्होंने अलीगढ़ बनाई थी, तो शायद मैंने अपना जो काम था, हर आदमी फिल्म मेकर अलग कारण से बनता है, मैं इसलिए बना था कि मुझे याद रखा जाए। मेरे जाने के बाद ना सिर्फ वसीयत में मैं इन कहानियों को छोड़ सकता हूँ। ये पैसे तो है नहीं उतने मेरे पास।
हंसल जी, इस पिक्चर में जैसे कि आपने दिखाया ढाका में आतंकी हमला होता है, बचाया गया है, तो एक धर्म विशेष को लेकर अक्सर सवाल उठते रहते हैं कि बच्चों को मिसगाइड कर दिया जाता है, उनका ब्रेन वॉश कर दिया जाता है, जिसकी वजह से वो इस रास्ते पे चल पड़ते हैं। तो यहाँ आदित्य के कैरेक्टर में आपने कितनी उन चीज़ों को इन्वॉल्व किया है जो आने वाले बच्चों को, नई पीढ़ी को रोक सकेगा और धर्म के नाम पे जो उन्हें मिसगाइड किया जाता है वो नहीं होगा?
देखिए, कोशिश हमारी ये रहती है कि फिल्म के ज़रिए मैं आपके अंदर एक सोच खड़ी कर सकता हूँ, सोच पैदा कर सकता हूँ कि आप इस मुद्दे के बारे में सोचें। कहानी आपके अंदर वो थॉट प्रोवोक करती है। उसके बाद हमें एक कि वो इंसानियत के बारे में आप सोचें। इस फिल्म में जो मैंने दिखाया है, तो मैं हमेशा फिल्म को ना दूर से, थोड़ी दूर से देखता हूँ। मैं फिल्म को, कहानी को जैसा है वैसे रखता हूँ। मैंने ना इसमें आदित्य के कैरेक्टर को जज किया है, ना ही मैंने जहान के कैरेक्टर को जज किया है कि ये महान है और ये विलन है। मेरे लिए एंटेगोनिस्ट प्रोटैगोनिस्ट वाला जो एक वो है अंतर, वो नहीं है कोई। वो इंसान दोनों है, दोनों के कंपल्जन्स अलग है। और क्या मुझे आदित्य के कैरेक्टर के कंपल्जन्स, क्या मुझे वो समझ में आते? नहीं, मुझे उसका गुस्सा समझ में आता है, उसकी नाराज़गी मुझे समझ में आती है, लेकिन जिस ज़रिए से उस नाराज़गी को व्यक्त करता है वो मुझे गलत लगता है। और वही हुआ है। मतलब फिल्म में इनका एक आर्ग्यूमेंट होता है, उसमें इसके कैरेक्टर ने इस चीज़ को डिनाई नहीं किया कि गलत हो रहा है हमारे साथ, दुनिया में गलत हो रहा है, लेकिन गलत जो होता है उसका मुकाबला हम क्या लोगों को मार के हिंसा से करेंगे? वो मतलब किस धर्म ने हमको ये सिखाया है कि नाइंसाफ़ी का मुकाबला हिंसा से करोगे, मासूम जानों को लेकर आप नाइंसाफ़ी का मुकाबला करोगे?
शुक्रिया।
बांग्लादेश में जाना और फराज के फैमिली से मिलना, कैसा एक्सपीरियंस था? आप कौन से
बहुत मूविंग था एक्सपीरियंस। मतलब ढाका जाना ही अपने आप में, मतलब उम्मीद करता हूँ कि दोबारा हम जाए, क्योंकि वहाँ सबको मिलकर एक तो बहुत मूव हुए थे। वहाँ की वो जो कैफ़े के पास हम गए थे, कैफ़े को भी दूर से देखा था, उसमें एंट्री रिस्ट्रिक्टेड थी, तो हमने दूर से देखा था। वहाँ कुछ सर्वाइवर्स को भी हम मिले थे। लेकिन और एक चीज़ थी, वहाँ ढाका जाकर ना हम जितने दिन थे, खाना बहुत बढ़िया था। और हमारी उम्मीद ये है कि हम कभी दोबारा जाए वहाँ और खाना खाए, क्योंकि ये भी फूडी है, इसे भी खाना बहुत अच्छा लगता है। और हम दोनों बहुत कोशिश कर रहे थे कि थोड़ा सा रिसर्च से थोड़ा टाइम निकाल के हम दोनों बाहर जाके मार्केट में कुछ खाना खाए यहाँ।
हाँ, ढाका बहुत कमाल का शहर है। हम गए थे, जिनसे भी हम मिले थे सब बहुत अच्छे से मुलाकात हुई। खाना बहुत अच्छा है, लोग बहुत सुंदर हैं, बहुत अच्छे लोग हैं। मुझे ज़्यादा फ़र्क नहीं दिखता है ऑनेस्टली, हम सब एक लोग ही हैं, ऐसा भी बॉर्डर खींचा गया है और हम ये हैं आप वो हैं, बट मुझे काफ़ी एक जैसा लगा। तो बिल्कुल उम्मीद यही है कि हम वापस जाएं। मैं शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहूँगा कि उनकी कहानी उन्होंने अपनी कहानी हमें दी बनाने के लिए, और होपफुली मैं चाहता हूँ कि हर जगह जैसे हंसल सर चाह रहे हैं, हर देश में कोई इससे रिलेट कर पाए, और ये एक यूथ की आवाज़ है, एक यूथ का एक संघर्ष है इसमें, और एक वार्तालाप है उस पर, एक चर्चा होता है इसमें। तो होपफुली वी कैन रीच बियॉन्ड, और ये एक अच्छी बात है कि हम एक दूसरे को देख सकते हैं, हम एक दूसरे के का दर्द को देख सकते हैं, उनका सुख देख सकते हैं और बांट भी सकते हैं। तो हम काफ़ी लोगों से मिले थे, उन्होंने अलग अलग लोगों से, हंसल सर के साथ से,
फराज की फैमिली से भी मिले थे
और they were very sweet and kind and generous. So we can only return that favor hopefully, and by doing honest work. तो वो हमारी जिम्मेदारी है और I hope हमने पूरी की.
Hello, this is Raj from Sansadvani here. Hansal sir, I'd like to ask you that what's the meaning of this word Faraaz?
Faraaz actually is the overall theme of the film. It is not only a character's name. Faraaz means standing tall, someone who stands tall. And I think ये जो अभी हम जिस समय में हम जी रहे हैं, जो हम दुनिया में एक समय देख रहे हैं जहाँ there is bigotry, there is a lot of bigotry, we are polarized more than ever before. We are divided. We are one world, yet we are so divided. We are united by the internet. We are no longer कि इस country से, यहाँ से, वहाँ से, हम सब we are united by this small device. But we are so divided. We have put people in boxes. So I think it is time for people like us to stand tall, to be what this band is saying, कि we are Faraaz. This band is the spirit of the film. कि we are all Faraaz. And that doesn't mean the character. It means that we are standing tall. कि अगर है नफरत फैलाने वाले अगर 10 लोग हैं तो 1000 लोग हैं जो फराज बन सकते हैं.
The last question, we'll be wrapping up now. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Pose for pictures.
बैठ के